welcome. Today we are going to discuss the ethical issues related to the suppliers, competitors, and the whole discussion will be like suppliers, competitors and business ethics. Till last discussion we were focusing on stakeholders which are not maybe business entities as such. We were talking of the businesses relationships with the individuals in terms of like shareholders, employees and the customers, who could be individuals, who could be some organizations also. But and maybe these are the when ethical issues arise regarding the businesses relations to specific individuals, these come to more focus and becomes the subject matter of discussion. But how the organizations are treating its relations with other businesses who are connected to it, who are in relation with it, does not come to prominence much, and this will be the focus of our discussion today. We will be discussing the firms, the organization's relationship with two other such businesses which are called suppliers and competitors. So, let us see what will be the flow of discussion in the today's module. We will discuss suppliers and competitors as stakeholders. With that, we will progress with the ethical issues related to suppliers and competitors. We will try to see this in the respect of globalization, citizenship behavior and the sustainability issues. The overview will show how other businesses, suppliers and competitors exist in mutual interdependence with a given organization. We will describe the ethical issues and problems that arise in the organization's dealings with its suppliers and competitors, and outline how globalization has reframed these problems. We will discuss about the extended responsibility for the ethics of its supply, what the corporations should take up as an extended responsibility for the ethics of their suppliers, and we will also try to see the business relationships and the network economy and how it may contribute to sustainable business models. So, this discussion will be spread across 5 modules. So, first we are going to discuss suppliers and competitors as stakeholders. Wait, we understand stakeholders. A stakeholder is a corporation, is an individual. Stakeholder of a corporation is an individual or a group who gets affected in terms of getting harmed or benefited from the corporation, or whose rights can be violated or have to be respected by the corporation. This definition of stakeholder we have already seen in our previous discussions. So, in this respect we can understand shareholders, we have earlier said as the stakeholders. We have also seen employees as the stakeholders. We have seen the consumers also as the stakeholders. Similarly, the suppliers, there is a mutually independent relationship where the corporates gets its resources from the suppliers and resources in terms of raw materials for businesses, for resources, human resources for doing things, some jobs within the organization, supply for maybe stationery is required for running of the organization. There could be so many different things for which the organization has to rely on the suppliers for getting the resources supplied to them, and in turn the organization pays the suppliers, and that leads again for the running of the business of the suppliers. So suppliers supply the materials, goods or services, and in return of those goods or services they take money from the organization, corporation, which helps them to thrive. So there is a mutually dependent relationship between the supplier and the organization. Here we will see also in this part of the discussion the competitors as a stakeholder. We may ask the question like how competitor becomes a stakeholder of a business. If we remember the stakeholder perspective of the firm, in which the firms exist in a form of industrial network, then and it is functioning within a web of other existing business who is bound by mutual interests and interlinked by the flow of rewards and resources. It's you can understand like competitors also can affect or get affected by the nature of your business, and it can also affect your business. So they have competitors, of course, do have legal right and also some moral claims and obligations towards the corporation. So again there is a definite relationship between the how the competitors and the organization gets affected by each other, and what are the steps taken by the organization to deal with the competitors then becomes a focus of discussion and review for ethical ways of dealing with competition. We see as a part of the supplier relationship as a part of an industrial network. So what we have understood over here, like the supplier has a mutually dependent relationship with the corporation. The supplier and then also has a relationship with the supplier. If we study this chain, then supplier has a mutuality of the relationship with the corporation, and there is a supplier also. Now this supplier is also supplying to your competitor, and the competitor supplier may be your potential supplier. And here you see supplier is there, the supplier is supplying to the corporation, and supplier becomes a potential supplier for the competitor. So, in this chain, the supplier who is supplier, here is a supplier who is supplying the corporation, but the supplier to that supplier may become a potential supplier to the competitor. So, in this way, the power dynamics in the businesses relationship varies with, like, who becomes more powerful in determining who is the ethical issues may rise up regarding the who dictates the relationship. Is actually there is a equality of power between the corporation or the supplier, or the factors related to the supplier regarding what is the nature of the material, whether it is a very like something which is you are producing is very rare or not. So, or there are others suppliers present around or not. So, what is the price differential price paid to the supplier by the competitors and not. So, different questions in the asked in the field will determine the relative power of the supplier and the corporation, and will serve as ethical issues, like who is the powerful, and in what way do they exercise power in the supplier corporation relationship, taking into account the whole network of, like, competitors are also present who can also, and the same supplier is supplying to both the corporation and the competitor, or the supplier become a potential supplier for the competitor, or the supplier becomes a direct supplier for the corporation. So, all these type of relationships will give rise to various ethical issues. So, now we will look into the ethical issues with related to suppliers. We can understand, like, the relationship between the supplier and the corporation is derived from this power is derived from the based on the theory of resource dependency. So, which helps to understand the relative power of the buyer and seller, like who is more powerful, as it was shown in the last slide, the corporation or the supplier. So, if the supplier is supplying to both you and your competitors, maybe it is appearing to be more powerful than the corporate, because it is supplying to two like rival firms. It gains power from that expertise of withdrawing from one and maybe supplying to the other. So, these type of things, resource dependent, and if it is a very crucial resource that the organization is dependent on to the supplier, and if there are presence of no other suppliers, so these resource dependency may develop more relative power for the seller, the supplier, as compared to the buyer. When talking of loyalty, so ethical issues may come up regarding whether we are choosing a supplier based on the loyalty of that supplier to the organization to supply things, goods and services whenever required. So, this choice is based maybe not on quality, could be, but on the loyalty of the supplier towards the organization. Preferential treatment comes when whether there is a if you have 2-3 suppliers who wants to supply things to you, goods and services to you, do you, the organization, the decision makers, take a preferential treatment for choosing one supplier over other and how it is done based on some preference that the organization may be having towards the specific supplier, could be due to this loyalty issue, could be due to other things of self-interest, like maybe some special treatment given to the person who is responsible for purchasing. So this preferential treatment may give rise to n number of other ethical issues based mainly on the area of conflict of interest. So when you're talking of conflict of interest, it occurs when a person's or organization's obligation to act in the interest of another is interfered with the competing interest that may obstruct the fulfillment of the obligation. So here the questions of gifts, bribes, kickbacks will come, where a conflict of interest rises between you choosing some quality good, selecting some quality good as the resources, or because you have been receiving a particular gift, so you choose some organizations, give some preferential treatment based on that self-interest, and even if the quality is not up to the standard. So these will give rise to conflict of interest. And so we see gifts, bribes, hospitalities, these becomes major issues while we are discussing on whom do we choose as our supplier. So we need to have a check on the intention of the gift giver for intention of the gift giver, in the sense what the person by giving the gift wants to get. So it may be like it's just a token of good gesture, or the intention could be like to get some preferential treatment from you, from the person to whom the gift is given. It will also depend on this whether it gets interpreted as a gift or a bribe based on what position the person to whom the gift is given is in the organization for making judgments and selection decisions regarding who gets selected or who does not get selected as a supplier. So it has to look also into the impact on the receiver, means does it create too much, is the gift so costly that it creates a cognitive dissonance in the mind of the receiver, and somewhat like puts him in a dilemma of deciding favorably or not in with respect to the supplier. And it also depends on the perception of other parties, what others are going to think if I receive this hospitality or bribe, maybe the value of which, the worth of which I am not eligible for, so I am not entitled for. These type of things will try to define what is gift, bribes, and what we do with the hospitality. Do we take it? We do not take it. And to help us in doing that, there are certain guidelines regarding the purchasing codes of ethics, formal purchasing codes of ethics, and guidelines provided by International Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply to understand what is gift, what is bribe, and hospitality. And if you remain within the framework of the expectations, then the gifts and bribes, even it looks similar and are having a spillover effect, we will be able to understand gifts as gifts and bribes as bribes, and try to make the finer differentiation and take our judgment on that. One of the important issues that we find in the supplier relationships with the organization, that it is the organization has sometimes to negotiate, debate with the suppliers to come to a common term or understanding of certain things. So this is called the ethics of negotiation. As we understand, negotiation again is a power game where two parties having some powers or differential powers try to enter into a relationship, and intention is somehow to or somewhere to make other person listen to and do what I am expecting that person to do. And also, like techniques taken could be so that is a different ways of looking into negotiation to a very positive one, where both are mutually coming together and commonly negotiating for a super goal, and then they are coming together to work it out. So we'll try to look from the that negative connotation and of, like when you're talking of negotiation, to moving slowly to the positive one. So there are different techniques, 10 popular negotiation actions that you can see: lies, puffery, deception, weakening the opponent, non-disclosure, information exploitation, change of mind, distraction, and maximization. When we are talking of lies, it talks of like lies about something material to the negotiation. So any fact that you try to misguide the supplier, or the supplier tries to misguide the corporation. So exaggerating the value of something, maybe the returns that you get after using the product or the services, so or better treatment that you get while entering into a relationship with this particular organization, could be the puffery as shown in the ethics of negotiation. Then we have the technique of which is called deception, which is the using misleading claims and promises for the using misleading claims and promises for the issues at hand, and it is misstatements of facts. Weakening the opponent is by directly undermining the strengths or alliances of the opponent. Strengthening one's position This is by means which is not available to the opponent. Maybe my network with other influential people, my ability to spread more money and maybe buy votes, so different other things. Information exploitation by the information exploitation is by the misusing information provided by the opponent and trying to track them in the way that maybe some information was given, but the intention of the opponent was not to use it in that particular way, but that is done. So, non-disclosure is where certain facts are hidden from the negotiation of the between the supplier and the organization. So, and that creates an information asymmetry. Change of mind happens when maybe the discussion started on some basic presumptions, but like if in between one of the parties changes their mind on what is the things that they were negotiating for, what are the things that they see as the outcome of that negotiation and is acceptable to them. Distraction is deliberately trying that the opponent ignore certain facts and benefits or alternatives that will be helpful to them. So, it is distracting the opponent from thinking in a specific way, so that they can think of all the alternatives and reach certain conclusion. So, distracting the opponent from that. And maximizing or maximization is exploring the situation in one's own interest and without having any concern for others. So, these type of practices may have a negative effect on the supplier and the organization. However, when you are talking of maximization, if you are talking of the mutuality of the interest between the supplier and the organization, we talk of techniques which will lead to like win-win type of situations, where both the parties gain by entering into a specific relationship. So, what you understand by maximization, whether it is a maximization of one's own self-interest or it is a mutually visualized like goal which will be beneficial to both the parties who are negotiating, and you want to maximize that through the efforts taken, steps taken, that needs to be discussed. We have to understand, to come to a conclusion, the parties need to negotiate, and how they are doing it has a great implication on what is the image formed in the other stakeholders' mind about the supplier organization's relationship, and organizations how it is treating its suppliers. So, it may so happen like the rigid, it may lead to rigid negotiation, where using of unethical practices one over the other techniques in negotiation may make the relationship go sour, and it may drag to such an end where they are it may drag to such an end where the negotiation comes to a standstill. It's not further possible. So damaged relationships it leads to a more of risk of enmity. So and because of these rigid negotiations and the feeling of enmity developed, it has an impact on the reputation of the organization and makes future bargaining troublesome. So and it makes progressive discussions impossible because they are visualizing themselves at conflict of interest with each other. They are not able to visualize a mutual goal. So it tends to prevent progressive discussion, and that opens up new issues. So we can generally understand negotiation as a zero-sum game, but if viewed differently, we can take negotiation as a chance to build a mutually beneficial relationship. In the next module, we are going to discuss ethical issues and competitors. Thank you.